All right, I've seen a lot of advice flying around about how to maintain like your security and privacy, and this will probably turn into a multi-part series on personal Opsec. But the political situation being what it is, I wanted to get one out specifically about traveling and crossing borders. I'm US based, and the US border has notoriously been a bit of a constitutional loophole on the whole probable cause of search and seizure of your property, especially if you're not a citizen of the United States trying to come in. I've got examples going back to 2010 pulled up just in a quick search about security researchers or even journalists getting detained at the border consistently trying to come into the US as US citizens and having their devices, especially their phones, searched by Border Patrol. I wanted to cover in this video a step-by-step guide of what I would do if I was preparing to cross a border, especially a border that might include some increased scrutiny. And I've made a bit of a guide of things to do before you travel, what might happen actually at the border, and 3, what you might want to do afterwards if you are detained like I just showed in these examples. Side note, if you're just like a normal everyday person who's not a security researcher or not a political activist or not a reporter or journalist, a lot of this might be overkill. That being said, things are not trending in a this is going to get better direction, so I still think this is an important topic no matter what your profession. I'm going to give some extreme examples of what you might want to do and then maybe just like some best practice stuff. The extreme examples are especially if you are in a profession or if you're politically active in any degree and you might have an increased threat model of the government trying to search your devices while you travel. Some of this was inspired by Wired just updated their How to Enter the US with Your Digital Privacy Intact guide, but I also include some information from EFF's guide on digital privacy and on the US border, and then also just some of my like personal, been in cybersecurity a long time, things that I might recommend. And like I said, the reason that this is important is you can see right here in the Wired article, Customs and Border Protection has long considered the US border and airports kind of a loophole to the US Constitution's Fourth Amendment protections of search and seizure. For years, the agency has used that opportunity to hold border crossers on the slightest suspicions and demand access to their computers and phones with little formal cause or oversight. Okay, so I've correlated a bunch of the different stuff from all these different guides on volnew.com. I'll share that link below. But we're going to start with part 1 right here, the before you go. And before we get to the full guide, I'm really excited about today's sponsor of the video. It is extremely topical to this whole conversation we're having around privacy, especially privacy of mobile phones. So real quick, let's pay the bills around here thanks to our sponsor, Cape. Trying to secure our mobile phones in 2025 is an absolute nightmare. No matter what you do to protect yourself on your device, you still need to deal with these giant telecom companies who have proven time and time again that they cannot protect our data when they try. And a lot of times they're not even trying, they are selling our data. Just in the last few months, we've got AT&T with this giant breach. We've got all of the major telecom companies being hacked by China, and that's just when they get hacked. That has nothing to do with when they're selling our information to the highest bidder, especially our location data and our usage data that advertisers love to suck up. That's why I'm jumping out of my skin excited to talk about the partner of today's video, Cape. Cape reached out to sponsor the channel, and I really wanted to dig in and figure out if they were the real deal before I recommended them to you or even used them myself. And let me just say, I checked in with some of my most trusted security advisors who did the review of Cape. Cape hired some really top security talent to review their whole architecture, and security experts I trust are switching all of their devices over to Cape. Cape is a mobile provider just like AT&T or Verizon, but they're built from the ground up with security and privacy in mind. So first and foremost, if you check out their privacy policy, they detail exactly what information they collect about you, which is as minimal as possible. They don't even know your name or your address. Everything else that they collect, they absolutely have to be able to perform like cell network stuff, like your phone number. Things like your location, your call records, they either do not collect or they delete as soon as possible, which most of the time is under 60 days. They have a whole page called Don't Trust Us. It's basically saying, hey, just don't give us any data that you don't have to give us, and then we can't lose it or sell it even if we wanted to. They have thought about security and privacy every step of the way. One of their biggest features I'm excited about is actually protecting from SIM swaps. If you're unfamiliar, a lot of people use two-factor authentication, but via via SMS text messages. And when hackers know your password, they probably also know a bunch of other information about you, likely from the same data breach that they got your password from. If they've got your password, but they don't have your two-factor code, but they have a lot of other information about you, they can generally call your cell phone provider, trick them into thinking that they're you, and they swap your SIM from your device to their device, and they start getting your text messages, including your two-factor codes. There's not a lot that you and I can do to protect that. It's really up to the cell phone provider. Well, Cape knows that, and they have a crazy secure authentication mechanism that isn't just like call and give your social security number, which is probably part of that same data breach. They use a public and private key system the same way that we do all of our major encryption on the internet, so that you cannot initiate a SIM swap without these private and public keys. I'm going to be partnering with Cape for a while, and I am super excited about this partnership. So I'm going to have lots of time to explain all the ins and outs of this encryption and stuff like that. But for now, I just really wanted to say, if you are interested in checking this out, you can get 25% off using my referral code, MattJ25, at their website. The link will be in the description below. Thanks, Cape, for sponsoring the video. So like I said at the start, we need to decide what kind of person you are, what kind of paranoia level you need to worry about while crossing the border. If you're watching this, I assume you're at least somewhat concerned with your digital privacy. So a lot of this advice probably makes sense to anyone who stumbled across this video. It's kind of a meme at this point to have like burner devices for travel, especially with things like cybersecurity conferences like Black Hat and DEF CON. When I first started going to these conferences over 15 years ago, people would like bring their own burner cell phones with a throwaway SIM card and all this kind of stuff to DEF CON because they were scared of getting hacked. And honestly, if your personal phone can't survive a hotel at DEF CON, it can't survive just like any day in your normal city at home either. Yes, that's an adversarial environment that's a little bit higher risk, but generally people aren't like burning Odays in the hotel lobby to hack you no matter where you are. That meme aside, what we're talking about today is completely different because we're talking about governments and their border search and seizures. The government doesn't need an Oday if they put you in cuffs, put you in a room, and plug your phone into a device to take a copy of it, or plug your laptop into a device to take a copy of it to search through it either there or later. So given certain threat models of certain people like journalists or political activists or even security researchers, it might be smart to have a dedicated travel device. Maybe something like a cheap Chromebook and Android phone for actually traveling, completely signed out of everything the day of travel, and you can kind of piecemeal whatever you need access to while you travel once you're through the border. You could even create travel-only accounts like iCloud accounts or Google accounts or anything like that if you wanted to take that up a notch. But it would defeat the purpose of getting a burner device if you just took that device and then logged into all your normal stuff. What we're trying to do here is limit what they might get access to if they plug that device into any of their forensics machines, or what they could compel you to do if they told you to open the phone and like search through your social media posts to see if you were critical of the government that you were entering the country of. If you're not going to go as far as to get a burner device, I still think that there are some precautions that you should take on your personal device before you cross a adversarial international border, to put it that way. So once you decide on what devices you're traveling with, it's time to prep those devices. So first and foremost, one of the things I think of is getting all of the information off of the device that doesn't absolutely need to be on the device and creating those things in backups. Cloud backups obviously are the most user-friendly, but pause here. Again, consider your threat model. A lot of these cloud backups, even if they're advertised as encrypted, the company that you are backing up to is going to have access to that backup by default, because they're going to need to hand that over to law enforcement if they ask. So you might not want to use cloud backups in every situation, depending on your threat model. If you are an Apple user, there is a feature of iCloud backups. iCloud backups are encrypted in transit and at rest by default, but Apple does have the keys to that iCloud backup. Apple does provide a feature to remove that entire loophole. It's called advanced data protection. I just did a whole video about how the UK is at war against this feature because it does remove the government's access from this backup data. Things that are generally included in an iCloud backup that law enforcement would be interested in is your photos and your iMessages. Your iMessages are end-to-end encrypted, but they are included in an iCloud backup. So if you don't have this advanced data protection turned on and law enforcement goes and asks Apple for a copy of all your text messages, they can provide it. If you turn advanced data protection on, that becomes impossible. I'm sorry if you're watching from the UK. At the time of me recording this feature is no longer available for you because Apple decided to remove this feature from UK users instead of compromise the sanctity of the encryption and giving the government a key, a backdoor to the encrypted data. So this feature is pretty easy to turn on. You're going to go into your settings, you're going to click on your name, and you're going to click on iCloud. And at that point, you're going to find advanced data protection. And I highly recommend you turn this on regardless of all of the travel stuff that we're talking about today. You can do this both on your iPhone and your Mac. You could also do a local backup. You can connect your mobile phone to your computer and then just store this backup yourself. This is obviously less convenient than a cloud backup. And if you're using this advanced data protection, it might even be harder to secure this as well as Apple would do it with that feature turned on. For Android users, Google does not have an advanced data protection feature. So if you do use their backup option, you are kind of rolling the dice with Google's access to your cloud backups. But super simple also on your Android phone, settings, Google, and the backup feature tab. For your laptop, you could use a tool like VeraCrypt if you wanted to go that extra level to create encrypted containers. You're basically creating a virtual disk and mounting it to your file system, but it's completely encrypted. I know a lot of my advice sounds like it's very Mac focused. Apple has a lot more features. You do have to go find these third-party solutions like VeraCrypt if you're using more of a Windows ecosystem. Again, one of the more extreme measures, but you can do this, is actually wipe all of the data from your device while you're traveling, especially if you just backed it up. Then you're crossing the border with basically a blank brick that they won't be able to pull anything off of if you get detained for any reason. And you can restore from backup once you're done traveling. Another thing that's going to help you here is fully encrypting your disk on all of your devices. The goal here is to make your device really hard to read information off of without you providing the password to that device. This is important because there's a few other legal steps that a Border Patrol agent is going to have to go through to compel you to unlock a device with your password. Notice I keep saying password, not biometrics. We're going to get to that. There is a legal loophole around biometrics. If you're using a modern cell phone at all, you're going to have disk encryption. You can verify this in your settings. But on macOS, you're going to want to make sure that your file vault is turned on. This is going to be in settings, privacy and security, and then look for the tab called file vault. On Windows, your feature that you're looking for that is built in is called BitLocker. You could search manage BitLocker and turn it on for your C drive. If you're using a Windows machine without BitLocker, you could check out that project VeraCrypt that I just showed you shortly ago. The next thing we're going to want to make sure is that we actually set a long password for our phone's unlock, especially during the day of travel. Not using the 6-digit PIN. This is much easier to brute force or guess or like see if you're unlocking it and just remember what you typed in. And while yes, it's less convenient, we can go back to biometrics for like your daily life, but you can potentially be legally compelled to unlock your phone with something like Face ID or your fingerprint. There's a bit of a legal loophole, just like how a cop can ask for a sample of your DNA without your permission. Your Face ID or your fingerprint, just like they could take your fingerprints without your permission, is just part of your body versus something you know in your brain. There's a giant legal distinction here. So what we need to do is to know exactly how to disable the biometric unlock on our phone as quickly as possible. On all modern iOS and Android devices, the easiest solution here is to power the device off. Not lock the screen, actually long press the buttons that you need to long press and turn them off. Mobile devices are in a completely different state the first time they're turned on before they are unlocked with the passcode. They go into a completely different hardware state, software state. The operating system changes after the first time you turn it on and type in your password. Some pretty obvious basic hygiene stuff that we're going to want to consider, but it is worth saying because every time I get on a Zoom call with somebody and they share their screen, the browser has the little update icon all lit up. People just hate running these updates. It's annoying. Your browser restarts, your computer takes 30 minutes and you've got to restart it and it's bugging you right before you're on your way into a meeting you're 2 minutes late for. There's no way you could restart it. Please, this is like one of the top things I can recommend for any general internet security. I'm bringing it up on this, not just because of like, oh, hey, yeah, keep your stuff up to date, but because the manufacturers of the devices that both criminals and law enforcement use if they have physical access to your device to take a copy of it or unlock it. The manufacturers of those devices are generally 3 to 6 months behind the actual update cycle. Meaning if you have a fully up-to-date device, anyone with one of these forensic devices, either criminal or law enforcement, will be much less likely to successfully be able to pull data off that device. All right, my step number 9 here, it probably deserves its own video. I've actually had a few comments here on YouTube asking me to make a video on this, so I probably will. File this one also in a bit of an extreme case. I've used this setting on an iOS device on and off because I wanted to understand what it actually felt like. But iOS and macOS have a mode called lockdown mode. It drastically limits functionality that you would normally use on your phone or laptop. A lot of things that you've come to expect on a device, like mixed media in text messages, and just like various like JavaScript things or scripts in your keyboard, different fonts, honestly. There's a lot of things just stripped out of your device if you're in lockdown mode. But because of that, it severely limits the attack surface on your device. Again, I'll probably do a whole video on this one, but I've seen researchers, I've seen the EFF talk about it, I've seen Citizen Lab talk about it. This is one of the top recommendations from experts if you are a highly targeted person, especially a political activist, reporter, politician, journalist. Even things like government spyware don't work on devices that are in lockdown mode. So give it a try. Like I said, it's a bit extreme. You're not going to be super happy with your device. If you're like a normal iPhone or Android user, it's going to feel a little clunky. All right, next, I just did a whole video going through all the different secure messaging apps between Signal and Telegram and WhatsApp, who all say they're end-to-end encrypted. I broke down exactly what each of them actually mean and my recommendation on what to use. The too long didn't watch that whole other YouTube video is just use Signal. It's open source. It's the most widely supported. It's not owned by Meta like WhatsApp is, Giant Plus. And it doesn't require to collect a whole lot of information about you for you to even make an account. It uses state-of-the-art end-to-end encryption. A lot of the other encrypted messaging apps actually use Signal's protocol to do their encryption, but I highly recommend Signal. All right, the last thing in the planning phase that you should do, especially if you think you're at high risk for being detained during your border crossing, is to have a plan and especially some legal support before you travel. You're going to want some trusted contacts that you're sharing your itinerary with, and you're maybe even going to want to let a lawyer know that you're traveling, when you've taken off, all that kind of stuff, and then letting them know that you're through safely. This is because if you do get detained, who knows how long till you have access to your communication devices again. And you want someone on the outside advocating for you, and that won't happen if no one knows that you're sitting in a room at the airport. All right, that's all the prepared stuff I have. What did I miss? Let me know in the comments below. The next section is the actual border crossing itself. Everything I talked about so far is highly oriented around like your tech and your devices and limiting the ability of someone to be able to like search through all of your tweets to see if you made a joke that they just want to like make a big deal about for no reason. Or say you're like me and have presented at global security conferences about how to hack on Google or how to hack Kubernetes or vulnerabilities that I found in who knows what. And they want to use that as an excuse to label me as dangerous. At the end of the day, you're still dealing with government officials with way more power than you trying to just travel and go about your day. So you could do all of the preparation that you can on your digital life, but you really need to decide how you're going to take the interaction of actually traveling in case you get like pulled aside for a special search or actually detained. It is not for me or for anyone else to tell you how you should act in that situation, except for obviously to tell you to stay calm, do not physically get in the way of an officer trying to do whatever the heck they're going to do, and to be as respectful as possible. But you should probably know beforehand what kind of day you're looking to have if you're going to put your foot down and not unlock your devices if they ask to see them or if they ask for you to unlock so that they could search through your files. If you are a US citizen trying to enter the US and you do deny them access to your devices, that is not a reason for them to not allow you access to the country. It doesn't mean they're going to make it easy for you. Doesn't mean you're going to have a nice day. But that's not enough reason to deny you access back home. If you are not a US citizen, that is absolutely a reason they could turn you away. So this is why you need to decide what you're going to do and how you're going to handle that. If you've done everything that I just said above, you've potentially limited what they're going to find if you do comply with them and unlock all your devices, or at least hand over all your devices. But it's super important that you know your rights, especially at the US border. For that, I am certainly not an expert, so I point to the EFF. I'm going to include a link to the EFF's guide to this whole thing below. EFF goes a little bit into the tech stuff that I went into, but it goes heavily into the Constitution and like what to expect from the interaction. So let's get into some of the things that they've seen actually happen at the border and what they're talking about. So one of the things that's really hard to even advise you on what to do here is around things that you say publicly on your social media accounts. As of 2016, the government doesn't even need to ask you for any of the information like your logins to your devices to start searching for this public social media information. The border agents can actually use their own devices to just look you up and see what they find. So the only real thing that I can tell you here is watch what you say publicly under your real name that you're going to travel under. That sucks to give that advice, but that's the advice I have to give. Just going through this page as I'm recording it, they also echo some of the things I said, like turn off your device before arriving at the border or any other risky situation. For a laptop, that means shut it down. Don't just close the lid. I did focus on the phone when I talked about that earlier. It's a good point out here. The section that I really want to point you guys to is like the law and government policies for your privacy at the border. So obviously, I agree with the EFF here that all border searches of digital devices should require probable cause warrants. But that is not the case today. Border searches are an exception to the Fourth Amendment. They do not require a warrant or any individualized suspicion that the thing to be searched contains evidence of illegal activity. Kind of crazy when you read that out loud, isn't it? And some courts have even rejected First Amendment challenges to border searches of digital devices. So this plays into a lot of the social media stuff that I just was talking about. The part I really like about this is the what to expect at the border section. So if you're really anxious about a lot of this, this is a really good read to kind of walk you through what you might expect if you're selected for any sort of special search or being detained. They kind of echo some of the stuff that I was just saying. First, decide how you're going to respond. Second, stay calm and respectful. Third, don't lie to the border agent. I didn't mention that. I didn't think I needed to, but it's a really good point. Don't physically interfere with the border agent. Here's a really good point. Document any names, badge numbers, agencies, anything that's going on. Because if you're going to later file a complaint, you're going to need all of this information. They have a really good section about implicit consent. So they say that the law enforcement officials are actually trained to be a little bit vague about whether they're asking a civilian for consent to do something. So they advise you can actually dispel this ambiguity and ask the agent straight up, are you asking me to unlock a device or to provide my password or to disclose social and media information? If the agent says it's by request only, you can deny, but that might come with some consequences, like I said earlier. So if you do comply and hand over the devices, they can scrutinize all the content that's stored on your device, either manually if you gave them the password, or forensically by plugging in some very powerful forensic software. Even scarier is they could even just store a copy of your entire laptop or your phone, even if they don't do anything with it right there in front of you. Who knows what happens at a later date? And an important point, if you later decide to bring a legal challenge about your interaction at the border, they might say, well, you did give consent. If you refuse to comply with the order, they can escalate the situation. They can try to seize your devices and access them without your permission. This is why we did everything that I said in the first part of the video. They can even hold on to it for months. Like I said, some of the forensic software is going to be a few months behind the operating system that is installed on your device if you've listened to me and updated to the most up-to-date version. So maybe a few months later, if your device is sitting in an evidence locker, then the forensic software is going to be able to catch up, find a vulnerability or a way into that operating system version, and then they're going to be able to do whatever they want. This might also impact your permanent record and make it hard to travel ever again in the future. You might get heightened screening pretty much every time. Or nothing might happen and they might just say, okay, go on with your day, have a good one. Phase 3 of everything here. So we did some prep, we talked about what might happen at the border, and then EFF has a really good section about what happens after you leave the border. And if it's a bad interaction, or if you're detained for a long time, or if they do make copies of your device or whatever it is, you're going to want to record everything that happens. So as soon as you get out of that situation, make sure while it's fresh in your mind to write down all the details that you can remember. Names, what happened, when it happened, how long, and identify any witnesses. If they did request any of your passwords and you did comply, or if they did copy any of your devices, it is really important to change all that information and make it as useless as possible as soon as as you can. There are even examples of border agents storing those passwords that you gave over on one trip and using them the next time you try to cross the border. That's insane. And again, in this doc, there are some government agencies and the EFF who might be able to help you if you have a really bad time. All right, I'm going to put links to my whole guide that I put together on vulnu.com in the description below. Also, don't forget to use my discount code for the sponsor of today's video, Cape. I'm really excited that they've decided to partner with the channel. We've needed a mobile provider with security and privacy in mind for the entire design and architecture from the ground up. What do you think? Should I make this a series? You want to know some more personal Opsec stuff? You want to know about iOS lockdown mode and what that means? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for being here. Follow for more cybersecurity news.